All right, here we are. Welcome to the Leader Farming Podcast. I have Noble Gibbens. Oh my goodness, this guy is has become such a close friend, and we went to West Point together. He was a few years ahead of me, and really made my life miserable a couple times when I bumped into him in the hallway. But I don't know if he remembers that, but yeah. And just but we reconnected several years ago, and man, I'm just so happy to have you here, so humbled and grateful that you carved out the time to join us and share a little bit of your story. So tell us about you and this EQ Gangster Mafia and all that you're doing, and then we'll get into some of your journey.
So, so what I'm doing now is I'm a podcast host, and it's called EQ Gangster. It's a YouTube and podcast, and then I've got an emotional fitness community called the EQ Mafia. It's almost like a gym, right? Like a fitness gym, but for emotional intelligence and emotional health, called the EQ Mafia, and it's a safe, supportive, encouraging community to help encourage, inspire, and equip people, leaders, to grow and develop their own emotional intelligence and emotional health to make better humans and better leaders and better people, better moms and dads and husbands and wives and that kind of thing. And then I'm also an executive coach. I do leadership coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And Zach, you'll appreciate this. I don't know if I've even told you yet. So, and I'm saying this to just show, you know, just just for me, I'm a big, I love Jesus, and so just real quick on the
Yeah.
faith standpoint. So so I've got five or six corporate clients.
Mm-hmm.
So number one, I did not do anything to get any of them. Number one. Number two, three of the five or six corporate clients are multi-billion-dollar companies. So I'm working with leaders and executives from multi-billion-dollar companies, and again, I I had nothing to do with with
Right.
getting those clients. And so when people ask me, so nobody, tell me your marketing plan and tell me, how'd you do it? I'm like, bro, I'm not trying to get in your business. I'm like, but dude, it's been 100% God that is
Yep.
that has allowed all that stuff to happen. So anyway, and all of this, this is God's sense of humor. All of this has been because I have been emotionally dysfunctional and
Mm,
emotionally clueless for 4 decades.
mm, yeah. So you open the can of worms. So let's talk about that. Let's share, a little bit of your story and how you got here. 4 decades of that is a pretty good training ground for for where you are today. So yeah, give us that story.
Well, so Zach, this is funny. An intro into the story. One of the corporate clients, one of the billion-dollar companies, the executives from one of those billion-dollar companies asked me, well, so Noble, so I was briefing 40 leaders that I'm now coaching. It was the intro. Well, hey, this is Noble. He's going to be coaching us on doing emotional intelligence leadership coaching. Does anyone have any questions? So one guy, there's 40 people on the Zoom. These are all big baller leaders of this multi-billion-dollar company. This guy's question, Noble, what are your qualifications and certifications? I'm like, man, I'm glad you asked. And I said, look, I'm not trying to tell you this to intimidate you, but let me tell you some of my certifications to be talking about this right now. I said, I said, I for 4 decades now. So these are the PhDs I have. PhD in being emotionally needy, emotionally codependent, a food addict, a people pleaser addict, toxic positivity, positivity as a coping mechanism, chronically late, chronically forgetful, chronically unorganized, chronic procrastinator, chronic oversleeper, depression, suicide, ADD, ADHD, self condemnation, self sabotage, self hatred, insecure, indecisive, no self awareness, anger from Bruce Banner to the Incredible Hulk in point 0.2 seconds. No boundaries, right? And by then they're rolling, right? Everyone's rolling like, oh my! I said, I said, I have just the last 4 years, I have been it intentionally growing my emotional intelligence, my emotional health every single day the past 4 years. So I have got decades of emotional dysfunction and emotional cluelessness, and I have been working on it and so of course they're rolling, laughing like that's awesome because they were late,
Right.
right? They were late with a bunch of those things on the list there, and I kept
Right.
going. So what happened? So boom, I was born at an early age.
Yeah. Well, most of us were, right? I was a little slow on that one.
I wanted to check the old bad dad joke test on you, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
so so my mom is a 4'10" little Hispanic lady. My dad was a big giant white guy, 6'3", 280. He was an ER doctor, a real big teddy bear guy. He died 13 years ago. But my mom, she's the energy, we call her the Tasmanian angel. She's still wide open, 100 miles an hour. But what happened is, growing up as a kid, we would yell and scream at each other, and whoever yelled the loudest won that particular argument. We'd stomp off into our respective corners of the house, come back an hour later, and act like nothing happened.
Mm.
So I learned from the jump, as early as I can remember, how to stuff and avoid my emotions and stew and brood. So I learned zero conflict resolution skills. Again, I learned how to stuff and avoid, and unbeknownst to me, at the time, when we learn to stuff and avoid, and when we don't get our emotions and feelings validated from our parents, we will seek that out in other places
Mm-hmm.
because it's a part of us. The way it showed up in my life was that turned into a hardcore people pleasing addiction from as early as I can remember. And then I went to West Point, right? We're not talking about feelings and emotions at West Point. Then I
Mm-mm.
went to Ranger School and Airborne School and the 82nd Airborne Division in the Army, jumping out of airplanes, not talking about feelings and emotions there. then joined a business cult for 2 decades,
Mm.
and due to my emotional dysfunction, did very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
Made it to the top 0.01% of the entire organization of 750,000 people, and became financially independent at age 30. Replaced my wife's income at 27, my income at 30, all because I was emotionally unhealthy. But society and culture celebrated it,
Mm-hmm.
because how many financially independent 30-year-olds do you know? So we were speaking all over the world, bro, to thousands of people all over the world, completely unbeknownst to me. The reason again for my success was because of my emotional unhealthiness and emotional
Mm-hmm.
dysfunction. There are a lot of successful people that all of us right now, oh man, if you just went through your Rolodex of who are the top 5, top 10 successful people that you know, guarantee you a large percentage of those successful people are successful for emotionally unhealthy reasons.
Yeah.
Right. But again, what does society celebrate? Society celebrates the hustle and grind culture. Right. I work harder than you, Zach.
Mm-hmm.
I sleep less than you do. I'm paying a harder price, a bigger price than you are. I've got more irons in the fire than you, and we kind of carry it around like we do with badges and tabs in the army. When it's all for, again, very, very unhealthy reasons. And so it wasn't until I started to get emotionally healthy that I started to realize, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I have been in this very toxic environment for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And not only the victim of a very narcissistic organization, but also I was one of the abusers of this narcissistic organization, because I was one of the top leaders in the organization. And so I had to call up and apologize to a lot of people, because I was completely unaware, emotionally clueless of all that dynamic.
Yeah, man. You know, I so relate to what you're saying because, my addiction and my pattern of addiction is success and performance and achievement. And I've talked about that a lot in the past. And I'm going to I don't normally do this on the podcast, but Hugo just brought me the book. I texted him across the room and said, "Hey man, will you bring me this book?" This showed up yesterday. I don't know if you've heard of this yet, but it's John Eldridge's new book. You and I are both John Eldridge fans, Wild at Heart, Resilient, and it's restoring your weary soul in these turbulent times. And so I want to read a little part of the intro here that just relates to what you're talking about. It says, camels have an Achilles heel. This is where we will begin. But their vulnerability is hidden by their legendary resilience. These famous ships of the desert have been crossing dune seas since before the time of Abraham. The stamina and strength of camels is truly impressive. They can carry heavy loads across leagues of burning desert sand, going without water for weeks while the human companions die of thirst. But the treacherous thing about camels is that they will walk 1,000 miles with seemingly endless endurance, giving you little indication that they are about to collapse. And then it just happens. And so, I mean, dude, we're camels.
You just described every entrepreneur on the planet.
Yes, we are camels, man. And it's just, yeah, like it's that resilience. And then there's no indication of, anything. And then all of a sudden, just boom, like either, like you said, suicide, heart attack, stroke, nervous breakdown, just collapse. And so yeah, let's
and I think that's a large part due to when that dynamic happens, that's due to a lack of emotional self-awareness. So
mhm,
it's when somebody is not self-aware of, like in jujitsu, right? We both roll, and I know. In fact, I got there not last night, but the time before that, I was rolling with a guy who's my size, and there's not a lot of jujitsu guys that are my size. He was 6'1". He was probably two. He probably even had me by 20 pounds. He was probably 285.
mhm,
Big dude. And wrestler, like Division I wrestler back in
mhm,
college. And he was, he's probably 40 or so. And dude, he swept me. I started on, boom, I, passed his guard, was on top. He did this ninja sweep on me. It was beautiful. Swept me. And now I got 285 pounds, bro, that is squishing me like a grape, right? And normally I'm the squisher, right? Normally
mhm,
that's my role. My game is the pressure game. And so there's not a lot of people that can make me feel uncomfortable on the bottom. Well, dude, there were a couple times as I felt him kind of worm his way up into mount. He had my legs, blocked, and then was working his way into mount. There were, I'm super mindful. It's probably when I am the most mindful is when I'm rolling, because
mhm.
I'm hyper present in the moment, and I could just feel, oh man, this is getting really uncomfortable. Oh, it's getting really right. So, but I felt that progression. White belts are not in tune yet to that
Mhm.
progression. It's
Mhm.
it's for me, for example, like when I get on top of somebody, some of those white belts will immediately go into spasm mode. They go into
Mhm.
it's a survival thing that kicks in
Right.
because they feel like they're suffocating, right? So they go into fight, flight, or freeze. And I said, and I'd stop them real quick. I'm like, look, notice I'm not. It's I'm heavy. It's uncomfortable. But notice I'm not threatening anything. I'm not threatening a choke right now. I'm not threatening a joint right now. So just take some deep breaths, and let's just practice with me just being on top of you, right? But it's developing that awareness of where are you at in your entrepreneurial journey? Where
Mm.
are you at? How aware are you in your mind, in your body, in your emotions? I just did the episode that's going to drop tomorrow. Well, tomorrow, Thursday on my podcast is conducting an emotional fitness audit on
Mm.
yourself, right? Where are you at? And then the other one coming out next Thursday is what's your energy management levels? Like
Mhm.
where are you at from your energy standpoint, so that you're not, doing the entrepreneur sprint or the work sprint, and then all of a sudden you drop out of nowhere because you weren't aware, like, oh man, this is starting to feel uncomfortable. I didn't tap soon enough, and now you're
Mhm.
walking around with a broken elbow.
Mhm. Yeah. Funny story. Talk about being emotionally present or cognizant of what's going on when you're rolling. I used to say you can't think about anything except jujitsu when you're doing jujitsu, except I discovered there is one thing that you can think about. And that is if you have tacos for lunch with a bunch of jalapenos on them, all you can think about is jalapenos. because
Oh no!
because they're like, in your throat, and there's all this heartburn. And so I know you're a big taco fan, and so I just had to share that with you.
That's
So
right.
so
I
try
love it.
try try eating a bunch of jalapenos for lunch and see if you can think about something other than jujitsu. Yeah,
That's good.
trust me.
That's good, brother. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, no, but to your point, so um, leader farming, what we talk about is this idea of a seasonal growth mindset. And, what the world subscribes to is this idea, you've got this chart of performance over time, and everything is up and to the right. I mean, it's got to be, every day's got to be better than the day before. Every month's got to be better than the month before. Every year's got to be better than the year before. And so, from an entrepreneurial mindset, most entrepreneurs are caught up in this idea that, I've got to continue to perform and outperform my best. And when we take a pause and we look back and we see that our growth actually occurs in seasons. And as you mentioned before, we're both faith-based guys, and I'm very vocal about my relationship with Jesus. And one of the things that he's taught me over the years is that my growth comes in seasons. And just like he designed the world for us to see, we have seasons, and in those seasons, we have difficult times, and even in the spring, we have thunderstorms and, things that happen, especially here in the South, tornadoes, and the changing of the season, and the temperature changes. Also, but we have winter seasons. We have prolonged winter seasons. I mean, you live in a state now where winter is longer there than it is here in Georgia. And so what I would love for you to just take that idea and what we've already talked about with your journey and your emotional growth journey, and just tell us an example, whether it be business related or a personal example of a winter season in your life where you, now looking back on that season, you see that that was part of your growth journey, and that you would not be the person that you are today without having gone through that. And that, it's because of that that your roots, expanded, and you're able to withstand, storms now that come. And so the floor is yours, brother. Share something with us that will help those out there listening in their emotional growth journey and their leadership journey to adopt this seasonal growth mindset.
Love it. So I don't know that there's anything in life that only has spring. Anything.
No.
I don't know there's any. I don't know that there's anything that
Mm-hmm.
only has one season. That
Mm-hmm.
that only has spring. That only has winter. That only. It's everything in life, right? The way, again, in my opinion, the way God designed it is everything's got cycles and seasons. And so to think that we are not going to have cycles and seasons is very unrealistic. And where stress and anxiety comes from is when our expectations and reality don't match.
Mm-hmm.
So if I expect that I'm only going to have rainbows and unicorns and skittle farts in my life, is probably not super realistic, right? And in that process, we all have to develop roots before fruits.
Mm-hmm.
And that root development process takes time. Now, the cool thing is that root development process can happen, and in my opinion, should happen in all four seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So that as we grow, mature, and age, that we, by the time we reach those winter seasons later on in life, we will have the root structure, the root system to handle whatever winds and waves that are thrown at us in a very healthy, appropriate way. So for me, it's funny. So this is check out this nuance. So this is how recent this was. Is this lesson came from yesterday? So you want to talk about winter? So I am kind of in a personal winter season, but in a business spring season,
Hmm. Yep.
right? And I don't know that a lot of times we differentiate that.
Absolutely.
My business, thank God, is now it has been the opposite. Before I've had some personal spring and some business desert, like
Hmm.
winter desert,
Hmm.
like it was years of winter in some of my business season. And so, but now, right now, it's a little bit of a personal winter season with a business spring season. And so I just did 3 episodes on this in the last month to 2 months, a 3-part series on maximizing, optimizing, and learning in my valleys.
Mm.
Prior to the last handful of years, my SOP, my standard operating procedure, my battle drill, my muscle memory is, oh snap, I'm in a valley. I need to get out of here as quickly as possible.
Hmm.
4 years ago, I went to counseling, and my counselor asked me, "Hey, Noble, how you doing today?" I'm like, "Oh man, I'm sucking like a Kirby vacuum," and I'm like, "Dude, I want 3 steps to get out of my valley." And he said, "Why?"
Mm.
And I said, what do you mean why?" I said, "It's a valley." He's like, "Why do you want to get out of your valley?" I'm like, dude, am I getting punked right now? Like, what do you mean? Why do I want to get out of my valley? It's a freaking valley. And then he
Hmm.
said, "What if God's trying to teach you something?" And my head exploded. I'm like, "What? No, I
Yeah.
don't. I don't want that lesson in the mountain. I want
Yeah.
to learn that lesson from the mountaintop, right?" And so he said, "Noble," he said, "dude, what if you leave your valley before you learn the lesson, and now you've got to repeat the valley,
Mm-hmm.
right?" And I'm like, "Oh snap!" So now, what I'm trying to do now, the phase of life I'm in now, is have a more curious and discovery mindset about my winter season, my valley, and not a judgment. Don't try not to place judgment on your winter season or judgment on your valley, but be more curious and more of a discovery. So now in my valley, again, just yesterday I was kind of feeling lethargic. It just didn't wasn't very productive yesterday, and I was just kind of feeling blah. And rather than like, "Oh, Noble, you suck. You should be doing more. You should be da da da." Because my wife is a hardcore achiever, right? So she gets done. She gets more stuff done before 9 a.m. than I do all day, right? She's a machine. And so it was very easy to compare, like, which is the thief of joy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was starting to beat myself up. I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes, bro. Like, okay, what emotions am I feeling? So let's start with that. So, and I've got a whole little process I've called APED, go APED, APED, acknowledge, permission to feel, express, and discuss. That's a whole nother thing. What emotions am I feeling? And now in the darkness, in some of these unpleasant, uncomfortable emotions, let me pull out the flashlight in the winter season, in the darkness, in the
Mm-hmm.
valley, and look around. Okay, God, what am I supposed to learn in this darkness, in this winter, in this valley? What are
Mm.
you trying to teach me? Right. So coming up with a list of questions that I can be curious about my valleys, and use that my valley, my winter season, as a professor, not as an abuser or torturer, right?
Mm.
As a professor, what can I learn? God, what are you trying to teach me? What lessons can I learn? How can I maximize and optimize this winter season?
Yeah, that's so good. When you look at the tree, right? I mean, winter season, there are no leaves, right? So the outward expression of growth, there's no point to focus on that. And so in winter, where does the focus need to be? It's in deepening the root structure and and the tap root going down, deeper, um, getting more nutrients for future growth. And so, like you just shared, is this, in that winter season, if you're a tree and you're focused on I got to make my leaves look more beautiful. Guess what? You don't have leaves right now. So you got like, all right, so what should you be focusing on? And it's that those roots, and that
That's right.
character and the depth, and those things that happen underneath the surface.
That's
um
right. Does the tree beat itself up for being winter? No, it
yeah.
just it goes to the winter, right? And I think we hurt ourselves when we attach judgment to our winter phases and winter seasons rather than looking at it again from a curious and discovery kind of mindset. What can I learn about God through this season? What can I learn about myself through this season?
Yep.
How can I grow through this winter season? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's kind of like, oh, hey, yeah, well, I'm in winter. All right. What are we gonna do this winter? How are we gonna learn? How are we gonna grow?
Right.
And
Yes, right. And the other thing is like, it's not again, how this is money. What stories and emotions do we have wrapped around winter season? We all, even like in real life, we actually have
mhm,
stories and emotions about winter. We all
mhm,
do, right? We have, what are our stories, winter stories and emotions about summer? I could tell you lots of stories and emotions I've got about summer in North Carolina. I can tell you lots of them, right? Because you take a shower, you literally take 3 steps out the door, you're immediately sweating again, and you got it like, right. So I've got lots of stories and emotions about summers. And so what are our stories, emotions, and beliefs that are
mhm.
wrapped up around winter? Because if we have oh no, winter's going to be terrible, well, that's not gonna set our mind, body, and spirit up for growth through winter, root growth through winter, not fruit growth through winter.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So that's something that I think man, being on the bottom in jujitsu. So oh man, well, because I'm bigger than everybody in jujitsu, I've started on my back in uncomfortable positions for 4.5 years now. 4.5 years. So I have been, hey, get in mount, get in side control, get in back mount. It doesn't matter. So now, guess what? I have amazing emotions and feelings and stories about being in uncomfortable positions in jiu-jitsu because I've been in them for the past 4.5 years. Right?
Mhm.
I don't have any like, oh no, I'm going against this big giant guy or this big giant black belt. It doesn't matter because I have played defense for 4.5 years. I'm very, very comfortable in uncomfortable positions now. So what emotion, stories, and beliefs do we have about winter?
That's good. Yeah, I've been here before. All right. So how am I going to respond? Yep. And I think that's one of the beauties of, I've both been through ranger training. I see your stump. I think I tripped on a couple of those in Florida, and probably have some arthritis in my toes from it. But yeah, one of the beauties of that school is to take you to your limit, to take you to a place where in the future where you're like, oh, this is hard. Like, well, is it as hard as that was? Like, I've been here before. Like, I can, you know, I can do this. And so, yeah. So I know you're running short on time, and we'll bring this to a close. So let's one final thought, as our 200 listeners. I don't even have a clue how many people are listening to this. I don't even look at the metrics. And but whoever's listening out there, what would you like to share with them about what you've learned in your 4 decades of your emotional growth journey, and how that relates to just this idea of a seasonal growth mindset? What's a nugget that you want to share, with those out there listening?
Great question. Begin and continue a consistent emotional fitness program.
Mm,
That will impact how we approach every season. If I am not, training and exercising and keeping my cardio up and eating right, that's going to impact how I roll, how I do jujitsu. If I'm only eating junk and I'm never sleeping and I'm not doing cardio and that kind of stuff, it's going to impact how I roll. So it's going to
hmm
impact how well I do in the various seasons of jujitsu. Same thing. Everybody's everybody developed their emotional foundation from our childhoods. Everybody, a lot of you, everybody. There's not one human being on the planet that does not develop their emotional foundation from their childhoods. And it's not if you're being impacted by your emotional foundation from your childhood. It's just how and to what extreme are you
mm,
being impacted by your emotional foundation. If you don't face and deal with your emotional issues, your friends, family, and coworkers will be forced to.
Mm,
Emotionally healthy people help heal other people emotionally. Emotional fitness does not happen just because you read a book on emotional intelligence or listen to one podcast episode on emotional health and emotional intelligence. It requires a consistent emotional fitness program. This is something that's big too. There's no amount of titles, positions, certifications, or degrees that will compensate for a low EQ.
mm.
So begin and continue a consistent and regular emotional fitness program.
That's so good. It's like you can't brush your teeth once and expect your teeth not to fall out, right? You got to do it every day, twice a day, in the morning and at night. That's so good. Well, how do people find you, Noble? You've got some great stuff. I want to share with my listeners on your podcast. How do they find you? You mentioned in the beginning, but just give us website again,
Sure.
everything.
Sure. So Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn are all Noble Gibbens. NobleGibbens. So NobleGibbens on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And then website, podcast, and YouTube are all EQ Gangster.
Good stuff. All right, brother. Well, as always, it's such a great time with you to just hang out and talk and get to share stories together. I'm grateful for you. I love you and I appreciate you, man.
Likewise, brother. Thank you, man. Appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you.